Alright, hey there, it's Gio, and I'm gonna be breaking down some music for you. So, I haven't recorded the first one, Let Me In, because I already have the project open for the second part of the song, Disremembering. This one starts out, it's interesting, so the way I did it is right after the song ends, it goes right into the song. So I had it in the same project. This part right here is Let Me In, this part is Disremembering. So, being that they have a little bit different context, I split them up into two separate saves so I could edit the mixing a little bit. So if I were to go back here, it would be different. Anyway, so I put a little marker here, just a pattern that's red so I can see it, so I know exactly where the end is. I did guess the marker changed since after I exported it, it was a little bit different of a time code. So I guess where do I start? I'll show you everything at once. I've used a lot of tracks, so a lot of this is unused and muted, especially this stuff down here when I don't need something but I think I might need it later. I just drag it down to where I don't have to deal with it. Sometimes I'll also have ideas over here. Basically, I'll just play this while I'm talking. Basically, I have a lot of ideas every song, and sometimes I have way too many. And so instead of trying to just completely crowd everything, I'll split it up into two songs like I did with this. Anyway, this was a little part that I was going to make into the second part of the song, but just I kind of lost inspiration for it. It overloads my computer quite a bit. I've blue screened my computer, switching the buffer length of my sound card. So be careful. I'm going to try getting better at consolidating space on my computer so I don't have to deal with that kind of stuff. Anyway, let's get into some of this. So the first sound that I had going on in this is this weird sequence right here, and I forget what the original sound was. I think it was a bunch of waves if I were to pitch it back to where it needs to be. The original sample, let's see what that looks like. I basically made a bunch of variations. Don't know why it's silent. Is it also sped up? Yeah, it is. So I basically cut it in half time-wise, and then what I've been doing recently, which is really fun, is using Stretch Pro since it came out. And you can actually automate the formant of this kind of stuff, and basically what that is imagine your voice, when you pitch it up a whole octave, it sounds like a chipmunk. So the formant is basically, think of how small or wide the source's throat is, which changes how chipmunky or how giant the voice sounds. And you can change the format of instruments. It's not as realistic, but I'm not going for realism. So basically I have it, that formant shift just kind of changing it every once in a while. You'll also see these little lines right here. The declicking mode I put to crossfade, so it's not just a sudden. If I were to switch it to out only, which is the default, which sounds interesting in its own right, but that's not what I was going for. That's a variation of this that I had going on. It's a really distorted, underwater sounding thing. And so basically as I have that going, I found this nice little jazz drum loop. And to give it some extra kind of sizzle, so I actually pitched it down a whole octave. And then I also went into these effects, which highly underrated. you can actually have ring modulation, which is what RM is. And so how much you want the ring modulation to come in, I have it almost halfway up, and I have it almost to where it's the same pitch ringing, so it kind of gives it that sizzle, whereas originally, oh, I guess I should put the mix down. Originally, without any ring modulation, which is great, but I don't know, I just wanted to do something to it. I recorded some guitar here. Looks like it's just going dry with some reverb. I like using reverb too because it doesn't take up much CPU. That being said, definitely use other reverbs if you want a more detailed space. Personally, I don't have any of those high-tech reverb things, but I would love to invest in them sometime. This was just the end of a little guitar recording I had, just to put some noise in there. I have a little keyboard with trem going on in here. The way I mixed it was just like that. Mixing, I don't know, I just do it by ear sometimes. I got some little variations in percussion, because I feel like that's one of the most important parts of filling out a track. Nice little thing right there. It took up a lot of CPU with all that analog-ish. The delay that the plugin had built into it. It's obviously not analog. Right here, I don't know why there's no sound. But you can use that kind of stuff. These aren't being used. I could just not have them here. This is kind of going on in the background. There's a lot of stereo going on in it, and it doesn't have that shown because I bounced it back and forth a lot. I like doing this with reverb, putting the decay way down. Sometimes I'll even put the dry down. I'll show you what I do with that sometimes. I've got these samples right here, which I actually consolidated. They were just single notes. And I don't know why those are distorted. I probably did something with them. And so I had a sequence where they were playing notes, and then I consolidated it just so it wouldn't take up much space. Also so I could make cuts wherever I wanted to. I have a bass part going on, and I'll show you that. Usually I will assign stuff to a track, but I decided to just kind of rely on the harmonics of sound design instead. So this is what I got going on in here. Simple saws, poly saw, that's turned down. Here's the envelope for the volume. There's the envelope for the cutoff, so it's going up and then coming right back down. And then that's it for the bass. I have some other things going on right there. I liked the sound of this. The vocals are interesting. So in this song I decided to, so it goes into this track right here. I like to EQ my vocals almost do a radio sound. Sometimes I'll go into Maximus so I can really fine-tune the frequencies. The mid kind of turns up that radio-ish sound. I keep everything pretty similar, and then I will turn the master gain up a little bit. So right here, you'll see that I put a little curve here. This means that a lot of the quiet sounds will not be affected. So only things above this threshold are going to be applied to the compressor to that curve. This being the most compressed, which brings it up to 0 dB, and this stuff will bring it down to whatever that stuff is, or up, depends on how you program it. Have a really weird kind of sound in there. Synth 1, totally underrated plugin. If you want to just make some simple sounds, analog synth sounding sounds, if you don't want to do crazy wavetable stuff, this is your guy. You got 2 oscillators. You can track it, you can rim modulate it, you can sync it. You have 2 LFOs you can apply to all this stuff. You have a filter, you have a ADSR that you can apply to the filter, a bunch of different filter types, arpeggiators, equalizer, tempo delay, chorus. You have a stereo spread with a number of voices you can put in. And you actually have a bunch of built-in effects too, distortion, bit crushing, crunch, ring modulation, phaser, and compression, which is really nice. It's light on the CPU. I'm advertising this. It's free. Didn't I mention that? The developer is no longer making it, and the site is off of the internet, so you do have to grab it from some third parties. I don't know which ones to find it on. You'll have to do that yourself. But I highly recommend it. It's a really great plugin. Please organize your automation clips. I don't do it, and it fucks me over. So please do that. The guitar that was in here before, different variation of the mixing that I put through. Here are the drums. So basically I pull a lot of drum loops from Splice. And here's the original. So that's the original one, and then I just chopped it up exactly where I wanted the beats to be, and I could layer it with this other loop that I chopped up the same way. It's a lot quieter. I think it, yeah, okay, so it's cut off right now because one of the modulation clips. I have that guy going on right there. This guy going on. And then when you put it all together, it sort of just has like this nice little flow. So we get here, and I have an interesting background, street sounds and soul. I really like having crowds in the background. And then I have that being automated volume-wise, so it's not just a bunch of sound. It's very, very subtle. If I were to turn it up. So, just dynamics. Really nice touch to add. Very interesting sound. You can achieve very muddy sounding stuff by doing Stretch Pro again and turning the Foreman down all the way. Brings out a lot of the lower harmonics. When you have a new part of the song that kind of breaks down, sometimes it helps to have a sub in here that just pitches down. And because FL has the built-in note bending that I really, really love, you can control it really well. Don't know why I have this here. But just because I wanted to use that, you have to use a native FL plugin. So I actually use 3x three oscillator synth. It's really simple, and since I just needed a sine wave, why not? I also, let's see, what else do I have in here? That's sort of just here to complement this. They're actually the same sound, just with different kinds of effects on them. And I put this thing back in there just to add some noise, along with vinyl noise, very subtle. You'll notice a lot I do have this kind of stuff going on. Something that I didn't experiment with a long time is automation clips. You can right click here. Am I recording? Good. You can right click on a point, and there are a bunch of different kinds of modes. And so usually it's default, it's set to single curve. If you do hold any point you have, any point you have will just snap at that point to whatever value you assign it to, which is really nice for when you're turning off and on effects, which is really great to do. So on that subject, this part I want the reverb to turn off, but I don't want to create an entirely different channel because I have filled up every single channel in this song. I also realized you can change the side that the effects are on, which is really interesting. Forgot how I did that. Is it in here? Layout, dock to... Okay, no, that's not how you do it. File, view... Gonna be honest, I don't remember how to do this, but it's pretty easy to find. It's probably in the view settings right here. Toolbars, mixer, I don't know, figure it out. Another useful tip is when you press F12, it closes every single window that's on screen, which helps when your project is slowing down. Right here, we have that guy going on, and it is automated so that the cutoff filter opens up, and I actually didn't use an effect for this. It has a built-in low-pass filter. I don't seem to find any success in turning it up. It doesn't really work as a high-pass filter. This is resonance, this is cutoff. Not the most flavorful sounding filter, so I don't use it that often. If I want to use a flavorful filter, I will use Fruity Free Filter, which is like your classic cutoff. Low pass, high pass, notch, all this shit, resonance, frequency. It sounds a lot like a Roland filter or WASP filter. Maybe not a WASP filter, those are more for synths, but anyway, I got this formant thing happening. For the drums, I have a lot. I decided to add some sizzle with rides. I have really light, airy drums for the claps. Ton of reverb. I cut a lot of the low ends off for the reverb. And here are a bunch of effects that I stopped using. Here's the filter for it. That really boosted the highs, because a lot of the lows are coming from the other synths. This guy is kind of a replacement for hats, which is interesting because I can give it a lot of variation. So basically all it is this stuff. If you change it to formant, and give you some really interesting sounds. Band rejects, I have a lot of the noise turned up. So that's it happening without any of the noise. So that just kind of gives it its own texture with the noise. It's overdriven a little bit. It's got its own reverb in here. Here's the envelope. Oh, that doesn't sound like it. LFOs are applied to this, so there is a tempo synced one going on here, which goes into the resonance and the cutoff. So every single beat, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you'll have it changing texture because it's changing the cutoff and the resonance. In here, I also have it doing the same thing, except it's triggering the amplitude of each oscillator. So that, well, it's kind of redundant because I have this going on. It probably is a little part that I forgot to take off. So I have the kicks, which are not coming through. So I probably have some fucky automation going on. This guy has a really deep kick. That's also really helpful. When you click on a sample, you can double click on the number and it brings it right up into the mixer. That's a little tip for you. Rough Rider, great plugin. This is a little bit of an older version. I like the older version because it's more visual. I can understand it a little more. If you want really saturated, punchy drums, this is great for that. It doesn't work as well on electronic drums. I like to use it on a lot of acoustic drums, and if I have maybe one kick happening, I'll use it on that. It does color the sound a lot, so I usually like to EQ it after, mostly, before the compressor. It seems to take away a lot of low end once it goes through, so keep that in mind. And then I have just a compressor here, so it kind of cleans up and limits everything. A lot of modulation going on right here. I used to use a lot of automatic side chaining, but I realized sometimes I want the curve to be different, so I will actually go in to my volume knobs sliders and actually automate them. Your automation curve. And actually, then I can control exactly what the curve is. This is my bass guitar, which isn't coming through because of the side chain. Yeah, okay, there we go. It's distorted a lot. I doubled it so it would be on time because it wasn't originally made for this track. I'm just reusing a lot of assets from Let Me In. Soundganizer I don't use very often unless I'm lazy and just want to put some fattener on there. There's the EQ. This is one of the IK multimedia plugins. I got it really cheap through my work because I used to get discounts. So I got, I forget what it's called, one of the big packs of plugins they do, and they're pretty good. They're not as good as I wanted them to be, but I don't know, I'm not vouching for them because I think they charge like $1,000 for the software. I don't think it's worth $1,000 to be honest. I grabbed it for a lot cheaper and I'm glad I did. This is a consolidation of a bunch of different tracks. And I use Melodyne for this, which is this plugin, not a plugin, it's a program for vocal editing. If you haven't heard of it, you can adjust literally anything you want from the vocals. So I had one main line. There's a lot of processing going on in this because I really had to make it come through the instrumental. Same kind of EQ going on. I needed a little more high end. Maximus, I give it a lot of high end there, so a lot of the low volume stuff comes through. This is kind of the breathiness of the song, of the vocals. You can make that come through by turning that shit up a lot. Put a limiter in here so it kind of doesn't go above a certain level and it all stays the same. A little bit of reverb. And basically what I did with that is, let me turn off the effects here, is I doubled the tracks and then edited them in Melodyne so that I could create harmonies. I keep on falling asleep, it's making it hard to see. Why do you comfort me? Why do you comfort me? I also have this guy going on, which is the original track actually, and I pitched it up a whole octave. Use Stretch Pro to bring up the form in a little bit. Sounds very Porter Robinson-esque. Got some chopping going on. I guess you can't really hear that. Let me undo all this stuff real quick. So then I exported it so I could save and really like work on it instead of being separate parts, like, oh, this is the harmony and this is the main vocal line working together. Now I get to consolidate them into one entity so I can overall mix it the way I want. It isn't the way to do things all the time, but it simplifies things and really allows you to nail down an exact flavor of what you want the sound to be. So that's why I did that. And then I got that stuff going on. So there's a lot of harmony. So a lot of this wasn't used, so it's just very cluttered looking. This is the guitar solo from Let Me In, chopped up in a bunch of different ways. This is a guitar track. It's a technique that you use, a lot of producers use. You basically take the first part of when something comes in, you apply a bunch of reverb to it. So it comes in, and the reverb tails off. You export that part, you reverse it. So basically the tail is reversed and comes right into the first note. This is a little technique I use to extend the notes so it doesn't sound super stretched. You do have to find a good point to where you can kind of obscure the sound with the rest of the track so it's not as noticeable. And also looking at the waveform to realize, oh, okay, so it has vibrato, so I have to be conscious of how frequent the vibrato is so it stays consistent. Very noticeable when you isolate it. Not very noticeable once you start playing it with everything else. Instead of using a phaser, sometimes I'll literally just double the track. You get that kind of phased sound. Same kind of processing I use on a lot of stuff. I did use a little bit of saturation. Looks like I used a little bit of a noise gate right there. I have the delay that actually comes in right there. The other instruments come in, you've seen this kind of stuff. I got some new drums coming in here. A lot of the time I'll have a bunch of muted ideas if I want to reuse them and see what it sounds like. I got this sub thing happening and I actually automated some stuff. So it comes in a little bit and then it goes out, so it's not super sudden. I reuse the verse right here. Sometimes I'll pan stuff. Another setting you can use on these automation clips is to right click on it and you can actually pulse or wave and have LFOs going on. So if you don't want to use like Panomatic, or if you don't want to apply a trem plugin to it, you can literally just do this, which is nice. That way you don't have to create a shit ton of points just to make something that pulses. This is a track right underneath here is where I have all the actual stuff going on. I'm using Serum. It was taking up and making my computer very slow, so I consolidated it. I can pan it. More of that shit going on, more of the drums happening, side chaining right here. Everything cuts out. Usually when you cut instruments out, they'll have tails of reverb or whatnot. So I literally have to go in, automate everything that I want cut off, and if I want to make it sound sudden, I literally have to put the volume down all the way when that part comes up, which gives you a really great sound. We have this little thing right here, which is literally me just keyboard mashing and then assigning it notes afterwards. That's what it looks like. and then it's automated to just come up right there. And then the drop comes back in. I duplicated the guitar here, pitched it up a whole octave, brought down the formant a little bit. Almost sounds like a real guitar up that high, but it isn't. It's the original octave just taken up. I reused some old recordings of Let Me In. I made a bunch of recordings of that song, and that's why it took me 2 years to finish. So it just kind of adds an interesting background to, I don't know, look at, to hear when you got it going on. And what else do I have going on here? I have something panning back and forth. Do not know what's panning back and forth, but I'll do that a lot, especially if it's in time. Variation of that hi-hat pattern. Here's a little fun part. Don't tell anyone this is actually a sound font. Since FL doesn't support sound font player now, you can get Sforzando, a free plugin that allows you to use sound fonts even in 64-bit programs. So this is actually the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess sound font. It's the bells that you hear in, God, what's the dungeon? It's the big snow mountain, snow-capped mansion or something. Great dungeon, great music. I consolidated it so it wouldn't take up a bunch of space again. I got new drums, a lot of cymbals happening. And then right here I have the chorus that comes back in. In the last chorus I have it kind of repeating. Why is it not coming through? There's also this thing. Come on. There we go. Love the sound of that. It's side chained. It's bounced. I'm gonna side chain it a little bit more. Oh no, that's the. Sorry, I also got this guitar chords going on from Let Me In. And then you reach the end of the song and it's just a bunch of chopped up parts of that same bell sound from the sound font. And so that's kind of the song right there, broken up. A lot of the time I'll have effects turning on and off. That's what you see here. I don't want the flanger right there, so I turn the flanger off. So on and so forth, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. Lots of space. I try to color code everything, so my vocals are usually green. And then other instruments, I'll color code the automation clips the same color as what it's affecting. I'll also color code the channels where my vocals are, even though I don't name them most of the time. They're all going to be green. I have usual colors that I go to for each element of a song. I usually use black for drums, dark orange for acoustics, orange for electrics, so on and so forth. Anyway, let me show you a little catalog of the sounds I have. It's very quiet. I don't know if I used that in the final. That's what I made a lot of those yellow brick sounds with. Very distorted. The key to making it sound less choppy is the further apart you have sound waves, the slower the beating of it is going to be, and the beating is basically how fast the frequencies overlap. Wow, 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 wow. So if you have a lot of voices in your chords spread out quite a bit instead of having them crunched up, so then when you have distorted stuff going on, you'll get really interesting sounds that won't be incoherent. And so those are all the sounds I used right there. Here's what my master looks like. I have Maximus on it. It's limiting it, so there's a ceiling. I have that on all three of these bands as well. Not much going on there. I don't like to put a ton of stuff on my master. What else? I have all my tracks filled up, even these ones. There's a lot of routing going on, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I don't know what more I can show, but basically that's how I organize everything. It's just a big old block of messes and stuff. So, yeah, I'll catch you later. I'm going to record the Let Me In one when I have the time. And, yeah. With that, bye-bye.